Hi, and welcome to the third series of the Fancy a Brew podcast, talking about adventure, pushing your boundaries, and chasing dreams of underwater exploration. The podcast is supported by Dive Life Scuba Diving Centre, the one-stop shop for all your recreational and technical dive gear and training needs, boasting a 5-star service and their own in-house gas blending and equipment servicing department. For more information, take a look at their website, divelife.co.uk, or on Instagram and Facebook. In this series, I'm going to be chatting to some of the divers I've met along my scuba dive adventures in the last couple of years, ranging from boat skippers, stunt performers, and underwater explorers. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, grab yourself a brew, sit back, and enjoy this week's episode. Right then, AJ Powell, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast from Japan, of all places. I think you're the furthest afield I've spoke to. How are you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me on your
No
show.
worries, man. Have you got a brew with you or what?
I do. Unfortunately, it's not the one that I was hoping to have. I got some of this watermelon kind of peach drink type stuff.
Oh, that'll do.
Uh, I was planning on having an actual brew, but I unfortunately ruined them last night by mistake.
Oh no. So what do you mean by a proper brew? What's a brew for you over there?
Oh, just a beer.
All right, because for us, it's like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So
Oh,
that's kind of.
I love coffee, but I can only have it in the morning.
Yeah, I
Anymore
was
these
going to
days.
say
If
you'd
I
not
have,
sleep tonight, would you?
yeah, I'd be up all night.
I did one with a guy from was it Canada or Newfoundland? One of the two. I guess they're probably about the same. And someone, it's like when people mix up America and Canada. It's kind of for me, it's just the same place. But
Mm.
he turned up with a beer, and I'm like, mate, we're not going on the piss. What have you brought a beer for? And obviously, it's kind of lost in the translation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. No, I mean, I love coffee.
Yeah,
Um, I have like German coffee, like just mass produced, like Jacobson's,
yeah,
stuff like that. And I always have coffee every morning because I'm not a morning person.
no.
And I like the taste of good coffee. I love the smell of it, and I always have some in the morning. But if I have
Mm.
any, too much during the day or just any late at night, I'll be up all night.
Really? I say I can't
Mm,
drink it, and I'm on caffeine-free tea now, and
mm.
feel so much better for it. But I do love a tea. Maybe it's the sugar just keeps me sort of sane throughout the day. But the caffeine was the issue for me, like much like you for sleeping. So because I drink
Right.
so much of it, I just had to cut it. So it's
Yeah, as we get older, things change, and
yeah.
you just can't do the same things you used to anymore.
Oh, don't tell me about it, mate. It's horrible, isn't it, getting older. So anyway, give us a bit of an intro to who you are without too many spoilers. Let us know why you think I've brought you on.
Oh, I have no idea. I'm so unworthy, I think. So
Behave.
yeah, my name's AJ Powell. I'm retired from the United States Army. I've been diving for 20 years, and I've had a parallel career in aviation. And I've spent most of my adult life working towards accomplishing every childhood dreams I think I can. Right? Don't we all? Right? The only
Yeah.
difference between men and boys is the price of their toys, right?
I've never heard that, but that's going to write that down and reuse that. I love it.
You can have it. It's not even mine.
Fantastic. Well, I think the first introduction I got from you, I saw you got a book on your Instagram. Clearly, either of us have been following each other in different guises, whether it be on my couple of different pages on Instagram or yours. And I'd seen you done this tactical pause book, so I was like, right, I need to have a look at that because me also having been in the army, it kind of rung true as a phrase that we always say. I mean, in the British Army, I think they call it a condor moment. There was just be an
Yeah.
advert where there was either condors, I don't know if they're cigarettes or like a cigar, and the guy would be having like a little moment while he'd be on his smoking his condor, like a thinking, relaxing moment before you then go poof, and go and take whatever challenge is just hit you. So tell us about your book. How did you start writing a book?
Oh man, that is a long and painful story. Actually, I
Let's
didn't
do
even
it
want to
then.
write. I didn't even want to write the book.
Yeah.
In late 2011, I had gotten injured yet again. I have a series of injuries, just a long list of them, from head to toe, and it put me in physical therapy for a couple of years. And
Yeah.
it came to the point to where I was losing some like motor neural skills. I'd pick up a pen, it would fall out of my hand, and
No way.
it was difficult to walk. I was really scared at one point. I thought I was probably going to end up in a wheelchair. And so after 2 years, I worked really, really hard, and I was recovering. And the army decided to medically retire me, and I fought it, kicking and screaming like a little
Yeah.
girl. And that's all I wanted out of my life,
Right.
so I didn't really get the opportunity. They said, that's great and all, but that we can actually weigh the medical records had some weight to them. We can weigh the headache you're going
Jeez.
to cause. So good luck with life, and give me a rating and showed me
Yeah.
the door. And I was quite upset with it. So I spent the next 2 years habitually recovering from the night before. I
Yeah.
would drink myself into a complete stupor. I'd wake up the next morning in a puddle of my own vomit, and then I would get up and I would hit the ground running. I started 3 companies. I was going to 2 universities at the same time. I was lecturing. I was doing research, uh,
Jeez.
and everyone I knew told me that I was killing life. That I was doing an amazing job. But they didn't know that after all that was over with, I was clearing out a bottle of whiskey and a 6 pack of beer and just passing out, and it wasn't really good. So one day in 2016 ish time frame, I woke up in the morning and I literally crawled into the bathroom and I pulled myself up and I looked in the mirror, and what I saw was frightening. And I was like, this is not me. I used to be like a triathlete and a marathon runner and a beast. And now I just destroyed myself. And so at that point in time, I'd been published for some research I did in sociology, and I was studying leadership a lot as my primary focus, because I was fascinated with the idea of human interactions in an organizational context. And I'd done a bunch of social psychological and psychological studies, and so decided to take that information and step by step, one day at a time, own and accept my life and rebuild from scratch. So every morning I would walk into the bathroom and I'd literally look into the mirror and I would find one fault, one flaw, and I would admit it, I would accept it and own it, and then I would work on improving that one thing. And I took notes. I had these little, sticky notes, and I
Yeah.
wrote down notes, and I kept all these notes, right?
Mm.
So after about a year, I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I said, okay, I'm going to get back to being who I used to be. Uh, and I wanted to leave. I was living in Canada at the time, in Saskatchewan, and I wanted to leave, and I wanted to go to Japan. And so I picked up a position, a job, and I moved to Japan. And when I got here, I had a bunch of friends who were veterans or CEOs of companies and stuff, and they're all like, AJ, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to figure stuff out. And part of my personal therapy, that I decided to use something that I hated the most, which was social media. I hate
Yeah.
social media. I've learned far too much about it. There's so many negative things that social media creates. So I said, I'm going to use social media for something positive. And I went searching through all of them, and I found that Instagram was predominantly really positive.
Yeah.
So I created an Instagram account, and I had no idea what to call it. And so I just called it Army Veteran AJ. And I started making posts. Originally, it was locked. And I started making a post. I would put one post a day. And the post had a very simple message, just something I needed to tell myself to get through the day, something I needed to hear. And I'd write it down, I'd make a post, take a picture, make a post. And some of my friends found out I was on Instagram, and they became friends. They asked me, begged me, and
Yeah.
I accepted the follow. And before long, I started getting a message from a couple of them saying, "Hey, man, I really needed to hear this. I really needed to hear this today." And I was a total ass about it. I was like, "Dude, bro, this ain't for you. This is for me. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
you don't even know why I'm doing this." And I realized instantly that was like the wrong attitude. And one of my good buddies, also retired Army NCO, he was like, "Hey, man, you got to write a book." I was like, "I ain't writing no book. I'm not an author. I'm not going to do that." And so him and a few other people begged me for like 6 straight months, just every day badgering me. And I said, "All right, fine. If I do this, will you leave me alone?" "Oh yeah, sure, no problem. We'll leave you alone." So I didn't know what to write, and I looked around at a lot of other veteran written books, and I was kind of disgusted at what I saw. There's a lot of me out there. There's a whole lot of look at
Yeah.
my career, look at the amazing things I did. Everything, the whole pay attention to me kind of stuff. And I realized that's not what I wanted. I went back to the mirror and I looked and I said, you know what? There's a lot of other people out there that suffer the same kind of distraught that I went through,
Mm.
and I think they could benefit from the same things that I had to deal with, the lessons that I had to learn.
Yeah.
So I went back and I pulled out this little box with all the notes and stuff, from the move, opened, pulled out all the notes that I had from that year that I spent rebuilding my life, and I started writing a book, and I wrote Tactical Pause. And really, what it is it's a 90-day mentorship guide. It's the same things you do in the military. It's teaching, coaching, mentoring, and guiding. It's designed to take somebody who has the right frame of mind already, who's made the decision that they want to better improve themselves, and kind of guide them along their journey towards purpose-driven self-betterment, so that they can
Wow.
achieve success in whatever they want to do in life.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So,
That's miles deeper than I ever thought it'd be, to be fair. That's well
oh,
done.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about that. And I've sort of for the last 2 years, probably more so because of the pandemic and not going on holiday and not seeing people, missing birthdays and stuff. My life took a bit of a crash. But
Mm,
equally, I had several opportunities to pick that life back up
yeah.
and make something different of it. And that's why I created this podcast. I found that much like you when you researched your book, there was nothing else out there that was just quite right and hit that niche that you were looking at. So I tried to create this that would not only inspire me but inspire other people to do different types of diving or take the plunge, no pun intended. But do
Yeah.
something that they might have wanted to do and not really known how to go about doing it. And
Mm.
I'm lucky. I've had the opportunities fall at my feet, and I've took them, and I've run with them 100 miles an hour, and really taken control of my life. But some people need that coaching and guidance and mentorship, like you said. So if that book is what it's about, where can people get it?
It's on Amazon. It's available worldwide.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
but that's what it is. That's the purpose behind it. It's exactly what our primary functions are in the military as non-commissioned officers, right?
yeah.
We teach, coach, mentor, guide, and lead. Those are our 5 primary things that we do,
Mm,
and we have 2 basic responsibilities: the accomplishment of the mission and the welfare of our soldiers. So, if we fulfill our 5 basic job type duties, then and our 2 responsibilities, everything works out. So we take care of the people that are with us and work for us, and provide them the tools that they need, and the mission will get accomplished in that regards. But you don't just you don't just people don't just wake up the next morning and be exceptional human beings. It takes time, and that doesn't happen mostly by yourself. It takes careful mentorship and guidance. You need
yeah.
somebody there with you to help you grow, to foster that motivation, that internalized motivation, to help you truly become exceptional at whatever it is you want to do, whether it be scuba diving or flying an aircraft or being a writer or an engineer or whatever it is, right? And so
Mm,
our job as NCOs, part of that is mentorship. And I mean, I take that into diving as a dive instructor now. And I think that's something that a lot of people are missing from their life. They're missing, you know, a constructive, positive mentor that will give them the feedback, the hard truth they need to hear, but in a way that helps motivate them and inspire them.
yeah. I'm
And by the
much.
way, your podcast is amazing. I love the stuff that you come
Behave.
out with. It's true. No,
Thanks,
I'm
mate.
not denying that. No, actually, I loved your ecology tour.
Yeah.
Uh, I really did, and I loved the interview that that you had with what was his name? Chris Lemons.
Yeah.
I thought that was an awesome interview.
I I was so made, and I'm not taking away from any of the other interviews I've had, but when someone is like worldwide famous as such. I mean, like
Mm,
in the dive community, a lot of the people I've had on are famous within or well known within that dive community. But outside of that, they're not. But non-divers may well have watched that film and gone, "Oh, what about this guy who basically died and then didn't die?" So for me, he was quite a big deal to get on and to chat to. He was just like someone I'd known for years, much like chatting to you now. It's just chatting to someone else, and it was dead good. And
yeah,
the
and
the feedback I've had from it,
he had that
go on,
relatability to him, and he's
totally,
just a regular dude, and he was just happened to be in an unfortunate situation, but the way he handles about it and talks about it so candidly, but it instantly brings respect for him as an individual, as well as a fellow professional in the
yeah.
community. And I just listened to the one you did with Sarah, and she's an amazing person too, you know. And so I was just like, oh, this is a great interview, another good one.
She's texting me now actually saying, because I've just put up a post on Instagram because it went out this morning. She's saying,
Mm,
"Oh, send me a link so I can put it up." I'm like, so I've just done that then.
yeah.
But thanks, man. I mean, I appreciate that you do listen to them, and whilst I do listen back to them several times while I do the edit and stuff, they are what I would want to listen to,
Mm.
and that's kind of why I went that way. There's a lot of work involved, and sometimes it's passion, sometimes it's like it's more like a mission. Do you know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
totally believe you. Absolutely.
But but it's just because my life is so full of exciting things, and I've tried to fill it with that. Like you said, we're getting older and things are harder, but my toys are just more expensive, and they are. But
Mm.
life's for living, not spectating, and I want to just enjoy and get through it and find new experiences and be coached by the better, more positive people in the world.
I 100% agree with you. I think that life is all about the experiences. And
Yeah.
and I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but
Oh,
for me, I mean, I the way I see it is you have one life to live. It would be an awful waste to sit on the couch the whole time.
yeah.
You know, there's so much in the world to see. There's so much to experience, so much to learn. I feel truly alive when I'm doing something that gets the
Yeah.
adrenaline rushing and pumping. You know, and not in a dangerous way, but in a I would say calculated way.
Yeah. There's another podcast I listen to. It's called the High Performance Podcast. It's
Mm,
based out of the UK, and they rated like very highly on like iTunes or whatever. And one of the questions they always ask, they get people on who've done, they might have won multiple world championships or multiple trophies or Olympic medals and stuff, or be like a coach that's done really well. And they always try and inspire, get from them, they're like business leaders or whatever, how they perform at such a high level and have managed to achieve such sort of high end stuff. And one of the questions they always ask is, how important is legacy to you? And that's a question that troubles me a little bit. What about you? What do you think about leaving a legacy?
and that's a really off question. Like, no one's ever asked me anything like that before.
Because
You
it
know,
is like
I don't know. I
is
don't know. That's kind of crazy. I think I would just try to do the best thing I can and just live the most amazing life I possibly can in a good way,
yeah,
a positive way, and and help as many people as I possibly can along the way.
yeah,
And whatever happens, let the chips fall where they may.
yeah. I mean, when I think of a legacy initially, I think like, are you going to leave a load of money to your kids, or are you going to have saved the world from World War Three? Let's not get onto politics today, though, please.
Yeah, let's
It's a
not do
diving
that.
podcast.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for me, I think the legacy would be exactly what you just said. Have you lived a very full and fruitful life and
Mm,
helped people along your way to experience as much as they can in what you've got to offer? I think that would be
yeah.
mine.
I think, I mean, money's nice and all, but you can't take it with you. You know,
No.
at the end of the day, the only things that you can have on when you're on your deathbed are the experiences that you've had throughout your life and the
Yeah.
friends and family by your side.
Yeah,
So
totally.
honestly, that's the riches I would rather accumulate. I would
Mm,
rather accumulate amazing family and friends and the most amazing experiences I can possibly have
yeah.
in my lifetime. Money's a bonus. It's like icing on the cake. I'm not really. It's not the. It's nice to have, but it's not like the. It's not the thing that I'm aiming for.
Yeah, totally. Right,
Mm.
let's segue this straight into what this scuba diving podcast is supposed to be
Yeah.
about, scuba diving. So tell us about how you started off 20 years ago. What was your catalyst to getting wet?
Um. So it actually goes way back before that.
Yeah,
My father was a scuba diver. My dad was in the United States Navy, and so was my mom. My whole family's military.
yeah,
Um, and when I was growing up, it was just the two of us, just him and I. And
mm,
he was a diver. He learned to dive in the Navy while he was in the Navy. And we used to go. We were in Florida. Lived in Jacksonville. He still lives in Jacksonville to this
nice.
day. We used to go on trips, on like camping trips to like Peacock Springs. You know, do the caves there, uh,
Mm,
and little dive trips and stuff. So I was exposed to it growing up, and I didn't really think much of it. And then when I joined the Navy myself, I had an opportunity to learn to dive, and
yeah,
I said, "Let's do it." You know, let's. It seemed exciting at the time, so I learned to scuba dive early on when I was in the Navy, And then I continued to dive both professionally and recreationally throughout the whole time I was in the military, even after I changed over to the Army in 2006.
Mm.
Um, and there was a period of time where I had the opportunity to learn how to use, Kirby Morgan hard hat
Yeah.
and do some surface applied, some compression air dives. Um, and I learned on doubles. Uh, and then there was a long period of time where I stopped using a logbook, which is retarded, because much later on in life, I learned how important a logbook was. Now, I should have known this because I've been flying most of my career. I mean, there's a logbook for everything. It's a logbook for the aircraft, for maintenance, for your flight hours, your personal logbook.
Mm.
And it was really important there, but I guess I didn't see the importance of it with diving until I wanted to bid for a contract. And then, they were kind of like, well, how much diving experience do you have? And I went back to go look if I had a logbook, and there was like a 6 year period there where I just didn't log any dives.
No
So
way.
there's a lot of dives that I've had the opportunity to do that I've never logged. So when people ask me, well, like, how many dives do you have? And I'm like, well, I tell them, like, I have 1,200 logged dives.
Yeah.
Probably have way more than that, but I just don't know what they are, how many they were over that period of time.
Got
Uh,
it.
yeah, and then there was a period of time from uh, 2012 all the way till about 2016 where I didn't dive at all. I just didn't have any opportunities until I
Mm.
got here to Japan. And then I was helping run a dive locker in Japan, and I was the dive lead for the volunteer rescue dive team
Yeah.
uh, where I was at in Iwakuni. And then someone came in and brought a shop in, and when they brought a shop in, they set up shop. They immediately, I got asked a question like, well, have you ever thought about being an instructor? Would you want to be an instructor? I said, no, I've never thought about it. Like, the thought just never occurred to me. They're like, well, I
No.
mean, you got a pretty good way of talking to people and everything. Oh, well, I was a flight instructor for many years. Oh, so you already have teaching experience. Okay, well, let's do that. If you're interested, of course. I said, well, yeah. So I jumped on that opportunity too. Um, and then since then, it's just been kind of this spiral of new exciting opportunities. I've started moving into technical diving. I recently got offered an opportunity later this year to do cave training,
Nice.
and this summer I'll be doing rebreather training. I just
Enjoy
bought.
that. That's
I
the
just.
hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
I just bought a rebreather. It's not
Yeah.
even sent yet. It's being prepared as a 6 week lead time, so I have to wait for
Yeah.
it to show up.
Go on
And
then. What have you bought? What have you got?
a Triton chest
Right.
mounted rebreather.
Okay.
I wanted it for a few reasons. Static lung loading, and then the workup breathing is much easier because it's below your body.
Mm.
It's got the depth rating that can compare with things like the JJs. It's
Mm.
got the capacity for the absorbent to do longer dives. Of course, everything's depth, temperature, time
Yeah.
uh, dependent. But there's a couple of 100-meter wrecks that I've been dying to try and get to, and it's just totally impractical to do that on open circuit. So this
Yeah.
is kind of like a necessary evil
Right.
and an ungodly expensive evil.
Mm. It is nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I've yet to sort of break that barrier of going deeper, purely down to opportunity. I think if I lived somewhere where there was that kind of diving all the time, no doubt I'd be all over it. But we're probably 40 minutes from the coast, at
Right.
least an hour and a half from anywhere where there's good diving on the coast. So it's just not sort of practical. And with my
Yeah.
life
I
being
mean,
the way it is,
I don't think that everything, diving shouldn't be about depth. It should be about the
mm,
purpose. And that's just
yeah,
my opinion. That's just my opinion on it. And I think one of the people I really listen to when it comes to this kind of stuff, Dr. Simon Mitchell
yeah. Oh, he's
from
so
Auckland.
good.
That guy's amazing. I read his work. I've read a bunch of his previous publications from one scientist to another. You get interested in
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, and he's got such a great way of presenting information. I
Mm,
love his talks, but yeah, absolutely. He's done this where he's talked about this, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. That it shouldn't be about depth. It should be about purpose. What's the purpose? What's the reason for wanting to go someplace? most of the diving that I do is well within recreational limitations, but I consistently exceed them. I consistently do like 2 hour dives
Yeah.
on open circuit, and but they're not that deep, 20 meters or something like that. And a lot of times it's because I'm either filming or I'm taking notes, I'm doing surveys, collecting data, looking at things like erosion rods for a period of time to get to write down bits of information,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But I just enjoy being in the water. So if I really don't have a plan and I'm not teaching at the time, then I'm focusing on improving skills and trying to find ways to better myself technically because that's my
Yeah.
specialty. And I just like hanging out in the water. So it doesn't have to be deep. But the reason why I'm focusing on trying to move to a rebreather now, obviously cost effectiveness and safety,
Mm.
because there are a couple of places I have been dying to go to, and like I want to go to the mines in Sweden and Finland and Norway. I would love to go to Plura, and that's probably a dark secret you don't really want to open up too much about. And then yeah, there's a bunch of wrecks that I want to see that are just they're not practical in open circuit. And so
Mm.
that is just kind of like the next step in that progression. And I want to do it as safely as possible. So I'm still kind of looking for good mentors in that area.
Simon Mitchell would be our guest and a half to get on. I first got introduced to him. I'd just done my side mount course with Gary Dallas,
Mm,
and they'd was talking about gradient factors because I just got my sun toe, not my sun toe, my shearwater
mm.
perdix. I was saying, well, what gradient factors do you think I should be on? I mean, I've read Mark Powell's book, so I'm like, still don't get it enough. Where should I put my gradient factors? And it's still like a proper mystical science. No one
Mm,
really knows, do they? And he said, well, go onto YouTube, find Dan, and
mm.
Simon Mitchell does a couple of talks on it and watch it. And I was just fascinated. I've listened to and watched it so many times. And each time there's something else I'll pull from that.
Mm.
And I might put a link actually in the podcast notes to this because if anyone hasn't watched him or listened to him talk, he's just got a way, hasn't he, that's really gets everybody involved, not just those who are of a scientific or academic sort of mind, like me.
I love the way that he does most of his presentations without actual data. And
Mm,
it's not that there's no data to back it up, but I was once told while I was in school a while back that a truly intelligent person is able to communicate complex ideas in a way that you can understand them. In other words, they don't have to speak with big words all the time and eloquently. They can communicate simple and direct and to the point, and
yeah,
at the level that it needs to be for everyone to be able to understand what they're saying. And I
yeah.
think he does that in an eloquent way.
We have a guy over here. I don't know if you come across him, Professor Brian Cox. He's like an astrophysicist or something, or but he's always on the telly over here,
Mm,
and he talks about how the planets have evolved and stuff. And he has a very similar sort of way, a softly spoken,
mm,
um, but a way that just gets the whole audience involved by simple talk. And
mm.
that it's such a good technique, isn't it? And it's such a sort of talent to be able to put
It's
across, I think.
it's really effective, and I think it's a part of it's a part of effective communication. I know there's this thing in the '90s where they talked about effective communication and effective communication techniques, but well, communication that is effective, if you will, and getting
Mm,
the point across. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be overcomplicated. I think. Going back to the gradient factor thing, what do you use?
I think I'm on 3570.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'll try that. I'm on 50/70 right now,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of like, in the middle.
Mm,
Um, I think that most people's gradient factors are subjective. People have different tolerances, and I think that's one of the things that Simon Mitchell is kind of talking about when he discusses, the big orange area in the middle. Some people will say
yeah.
this is more yellow and this is maybe more red, but everybody can agree that one is one and the other is the other.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that different people have different tolerances, not just mentally, like different people have different tolerances for narcosis.
Yeah.
But I think that different people have different tolerances physiologically as well. Tissues, certain spongibility, certain ability to hold and retain gases, um, and expel them, at the same time.
Yeah.
So figuring out what gradient factor is good for you is probably an exercise of just repeatedly diving and gauging how you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Maybe writing it down,
And
keeping
being
a
lucky.
little
I think
journal.
you'll only ever get it truly nipped when when you actually get bent. You'll know, oh, I've gone too far.
Oh yeah, no, don't do that. Keep it conservative. But I'm sure there's days where you might be able to do a dive where you're conservative to, like, for example, if your conservative is 30-70 right now. So
Yeah.
you're doing more deeper stops.
Mm.
And you may find that maybe if you adjusted it to what I'm using, 50-70, you're coming up a little bit more before you hit that 50% mark.
Yeah.
And you're not really you're giving your medium rate tissues less time to on gas while you're trying to off gas at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe after the dive you might find that you don't feel as tired, something simple like that. So give it a couple months maybe, and just keep a journal and write down how you feel after the dive. Do I feel tired? Do I feel groggy? Am I a
Yeah.
little on edge? That kind of thing. And then go back to it sometime later and just read through it, and of course write down what your gradient factors were in your diet profile. And you
Yeah.
may find that you can pull out some data and say, oh, this gradient factor really works good for me, and then switch to that.
Mm. I think largely the problem I'd have over here is it's always cold and wet.
Mm,
So I'm always feeling, oh, this is miserable when you get out of the water. It's going to be back in the water.
I
And
love that.
and the period of time, so like it was it beginning of October, we did a week up at Scapa Flow, north of Scotland.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was a sort of an intense period of diving. Only 2 dives a day, about 60-minute dives, two relatively deep, 35 touching 40 meters on my rebreather. But then I'd get out of the water, I'd be knackered because I'd be fighting this, the wind and the chop of the
Mm,
sea, trying to fight to get back in the boat. Then the boat would be all everywhere, so I'd probably feeling sick. I probably had a rubbish night's sleep. And then next week, I go back to work and I probably wouldn't dive again for a weekend. So there's no consistency. So I'd always be feeling tired or lethargic or fatigued. So if like I assume you might have regular periods of diving to somewhere nice and warm, the balance would never be the same. So to get that sort of consistency in diving, where I could go, last week I didn't feel so good. Now I've changed my gradient factors on the same dive in the same sort of
mm,
scenario.
mm.
Um, to keep it
That
kind of scientific on a proper experimental level,
mm.
But I I've never really experimented with my gradient factors. I kind of looked at what was other people doing, and those other people being of a similar height, weight, build as me, doing a similar sort of dive profile as me, and went with that. And it's like without changing it, like you said, I should do. It's not,
I'm not I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. I was gonna say it's just
Oh,
not
no,
done me any harm at
yeah,
that point.
I'm not suggesting that you should change it. I'm just saying
Okay.
that the idea of finding what is optimal for you
Yeah.
personally is going to be an experiment, because
Mm,
every person is unique. And maybe
yeah.
other people that have the same height and build as you may have different physiological characteristics, different diet, different health,
Mm,
or other ailments.
yeah.
Over the course of 10 or 20 years, maybe they had a different lifestyle. Uh, and so their decompression can be affected differently. Their profile can affect them differently
Totally.
than yours. Uh, in no way am I saying, well, I mean, 30-70 is bad. I'm not saying that at all. Uh, Obviously, it's not. It works great. Um, all I was saying is that the process of finding out what is optimal for each individual person is going to be
Mm,
something that they'll have to do on their own, because there is
yeah.
this large gray area,
I think
you know.
a friend of mine, I've not seen this and he's not told me, I've just been told. He's on something daft like 90-90. Like, you're pushing it there, aren't you?
He's going straight to the Bowman Max there.
Seems
He's
to
going
work
right
for
to the
him.
line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going
So what
right to the
kind of
line there.
diving's what's your cup of tea? What do you do? What's your favourite?
Um,
What gets you going?
Harsh, cold, high waves, open ocean, wintertime.
Yeah.
I think I've spent the overwhelming majority of my lifetime being cold, and I hate being cold.
Oh,
Uh,
tell me about it.
I'm I'm a thin-blooded kind of person, and I like I like summertime. I like being
Yeah.
warm, but I have never done resort diving. I've never
No.
had the opportunity to do, the tropical paradise type stuff the way that everyone else does. I've had a couple of times where I've gotten to experience some of that in short trips. For example, in Guam, there's this
Yeah.
beautiful dive you can do where they have these two shipwrecks that are right next to each other. One's from World War One
Nice.
and one's from World War Two, and it's in Upper Harbor. And you dive down, and if you go to the where the two are closest together, you can put your hands out and you can touch both of them.
No way.
And yeah, it's an amazing dive to do. Uh, so I've had the opportunity to do some stuff like that, but most of my diving has been cold water diving
Yeah.
in bad conditions, limited visibility, and consequently enough, I love that kind of diving. As much as I hate being cold, I love that kind of challenging environment, and it's my
Mm.
favorite environment to train students in as well. Uh, Here where I'm at in Japan right now, the water temperature is all of 10 degrees. Uh, so it does get cold where I'm at
Mm.
right now, and in the summertime, it gets up to the high 20s
Right.
because there's this current that comes up from Australia and comes
Yeah.
up along the coastline of Japan. Uh, so you get this huge spread of wildlife from tropical species that you would find in like Indonesia and
Mm.
these cold water, temperate climate species that intermix and intermingle in the same places, along with a bunch of coral and stuff. And then you get a huge swing of temperature ranging from the high 20s to down to 10 degrees in the wintertime.
Mm.
And so it does get cold here, and I love it when it gets cold. The water gets clear. There's less people in the water. It's more challenging, and it's just generally peaceful and quiet. It's nice diving.
Yeah.
But I love training students in this environment, and a lot of times I get students that'll ask me these questions. They'll be like, this is hard. This sucks. Why not wait until the winter? And I tell them, no, do it now. Do it now. Uh, and they always want to go to places like Bali or they want to go to the Philippines, or they want
Yeah.
to go to Thailand or Okinawa or Hawaii to dive. And I'm like, I just do this now. Trust me, you think me before it later. And a couple months ago, last year, I had a student that he got his basic course, certified as a basic open water scuba diver, and then he wanted to take a trip to Okinawa. So I set him up with a trip to go down there, and he came back 2 weeks later, and he was like, "You were so right. There was
Mm.
While I was down there, the water was beautiful. It was warm. It was crystal clear." And I saw all of these people who were struggling, and they were having the hardest time diving in this beautiful water, and I was just like a sea turtle, just hovering there motionlessly.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's because your training was 10 times what they went through. And so he became a believer after that. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's why this is so great. It's perfect to train people in that type of environment.
Mm. That's exactly how we had it. Our local quarry is well renowned for having the worst visibility,
Mm,
but we trained her, and then when we dived down in the Canary Islands just off of Africa,
mm,
and a couple of weeks later, and it was beautiful. You could see for me, 20 or so meters. There's such an amount of fish and stuff going on. We could appreciate them. Train hard, fight easy. That's what we were taught in
yeah,
the army.
exactly,
So
exactly.
do that under the water, and you'll appreciate it so much more.
That's exactly the mentality. I love that. I think, yeah, if you're willing to put in the work and train really hard now, diving is going to be so much more of an enjoyable experience later on.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than fighting underwater against yourself and then physics that you can't beat.
What's worse is when you get more experience in diving and it suddenly done light bulb upstairs goes
Yeah.
on, and you suddenly realize that you are your own worst enemy. That
Mm.
diving is an exercise and less is more. The less you try to control yourself in the water, the less work you try to do, the better you are, the more in
Yeah.
control you are.
I can certainly identify with that though. The cold water and less people. Because like I said, we did Scapa late last year, and then just before the pandemic, we went to the Red Sea with a group of mates, and to dive similar sort of depths, but one being beautiful, tropically warm, and one being cold and murky. So much less people in the horrible sort of aspect of the dive. But I would much prefer to have nobody around and me just, have it to myself as such, or the group of people we're with, rather than 30 or 40 people just crashing around a wreck and visibility getting kicked up everywhere. And I
Oh,
hate
tell me
that.
about it. I don't want to say this and sound negative about it, but I mean, I live in Asia, right? I mean,
Mm.
statistically, we have like the world's worst divers. uh, I mean, if you think about it, and Japan's pretty bad. There is if there's a pandemic of bad training that exists. Now, there's
Really?
some amazing divers here. I
Yeah.
don't want to sound like the whole country, but there's arguably like 90% way more of some of the world's worst divers. You see them all the time, walking on everything,
Mm.
crashing on everything, dragging their equipment, dragging their gear. I witnessed a guy rip a regulator off of a hose. It got caught
Wow.
between some rocks, and he jerked real hard, and it was hard enough to pull the hose off the part that was crimped. And he ran out of air in like 30 seconds. He was all of maybe 10 meters, and he did this quick bolt to the surface, and then couldn't understand, wide-eyed and everything, and couldn't understand
Oh no.
why, or what just happened. And then,
Yeah.
he's dragging all his stuff everywhere. Nothing's clipped off, nothing is contained. He's got this jacket style BC with these crap fins and current, and his regulator just get caught between a couple of rocks, and
Mm.
he didn't even like he didn't even care. Like, he didn't look back to find out what was catching him. He just gave himself a good tug and just pulled the thing right off
No.
somehow. Yeah. And just, gas coming out everywhere, and he realizes real quick that he's out of air and bolts right to the surface. And I'm like, oh man, who taught this guy how to dive? Like, how did that happen? And that's just another kind of sociological issue that I think I'm going to probably study here soon. Is, is
I think though, if you look at, certainly for me, who came from a background with diving through the BSAC, but if you look at how any other training agencies seem to be progressing now, training their instructors or in their training literature, it
Mm,
seems to be progressing into a more technical aspect. So whether they're showing the long hose or the frog kick
mm,
and the sort of out of gas drills,
mm,
whether it be primary take or donate and stuff now, everyone seems to be erring on that sort of direction, don't they? And less is more, the sort of DIR, do it right. Not to suggest everyone's doing it wrong, but just that there's a different way of doing it, and this is perhaps how we're going to progress the entire
mm,
diving industry. So
mm.
maybe in 20 or 30 years, these diving Christmas trees might have just disappeared,
I'm
diving
not
on the knees and
sure.
all that gone.
I'm certain that that'll happen across North America and Europe,
Mm,
and other parts of the world. Not so certain in places that tend to hold on to things for the sake of holding on to things will be so quick to change.
right?
There's a lot of stiffness and rigidity in culture and society in different places of the world,
Yeah,
where it may be more difficult. People are more reluctant to adopt a change. I mean, divers historically are pretty conservative when it comes to change as well,
yeah.
uh, and arguably so. It helps keep us safe as a self-regulated industry.
Mm,
Um, but I'm not 100% on how BSAC does it. But on the NOWI side, for example, our instructor training path is really long. Uh, we don't have these 10-day intensive ITCs to produce an instructor out of.
yeah,
It's a mentorship program. NOWI
right.
demands that you take that your instructor pipeline to train instructors is more mentorship. It takes a prolonged period of time. Mine was 6 months
Yeah,
of diving every day, going through the instructor program, before, and then at the end, you get, I'm sure that it's the same with other agencies. You get evaluated blindly by a bunch of other instructors, and then they all ask this question: is would I want this person teaching my loved ones? And if they can't say yes without any doubt, then you're not going to become an instructor. It doesn't matter what you've done. That's it. You're not.
yeah.
It's never going to happen. Uh, I do agree with the trimming down of the fat and simplifying the equipment. I think a lot of it more has to do with the mentality of the training, though.
Mm,
Some equipment's necessary. There's a lot of equipment, especially in the market, that is unnecessary, and there's a lot of equipment that is dangerous. Those retractable reels, for example. I've seen somebody get tangled up in those, but they're very popular, and everybody has them.
mm,
The suicide clips. I mean, I advocate people get snap bolts over that, because the gate can work,
yeah.
versus something getting caught in one of those suicide clips, those hook clips,
Widow
right?
makers. I've read a book
Yeah.
called, what was it called now? I've got it here somewhere. Can I see it? No, I can't see it, but whatever it was called, but they were nicknaming them Widowmakers because they
Yeah,
just get clipped on. You'd have one on your back or something, get clipped on, you can't reach it, can't get off. That's you
right.
dead.
So Naui philosophy focuses heavily on independence of the diver.
Mm,
We want to train people to be thinking divers, not just follow a script. And we want to teach them to be uh, uh, self-reliant and not reliant on technology, equipment,
yeah.
or buddies. Inevitably, everybody goes diving. If we highly recommend people go diving as a buddy pair, absolutely,
Mm,
especially early on in your
yeah.
diving career. But how many times, let me ask you, how many times while you were diving with a buddy was your buddy 20, 30 meters away and the surface was 10 meters away?
Yeah. Oh,
Now, are you
so many
diving
times.
as a pair that time? Now
Yeah.
you're practically solo, right?
Mm,
So so we prefer to train divers from the very beginning to be 100% neutrally buoyant for primacy's sake, uh, to be self-reliant, to not become dependent upon other people, technology, or equipment, to be safe divers. We want them to be confident, competent, capable, safe divers who can
yeah.
think for themselves. And part of that includes rescue. So every diver with now, again, I don't know how BSAC is, but every diver with NAUI is taught both self and buddy rescue techniques from day one. So we teach them how to recover divers who are unconscious underwater, on the surface, in water CPR, um, or rescue breathing and
Yeah.
accident scene management, self rescue, checking your valves and making sure all your equipment is proper before you get in the water. All these kinds of things I think are highly important to dive training, and you see that there are some agencies that are adopting them more, and I think that that's a good thing. The
Yeah.
right frame of mind is really important, more than new gear or something like that. I think
Yeah.
that there's a
Totally.
lot of people that have way too much stuff, way too much kit on them,
Yeah.
and there's something to be said about having kit for a purpose. But I see people every weekend where I'm at that head to toe are covered in everything imaginable you can think of, and they spent maybe $30,000 on all this stuff, and they're a weekend hobbyist who just got certified a month ago,
Yeah.
for the first time. But I mean, but that's a cultural thing. Here, they go absolutely nuts for their hobbies. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon to find somebody who will blow 30 grand on a camera, on camera equipment, who just got into photography.
Mm. All the gear, no idea.
Yes, yes, there's a lot of that.
Oh, terrible. I was guilty of that. We were still learning in the pool. I'm sure it was, and we might have done one open water session, I forget now. It's a few years ago in it. And I was desperate to get a GoPro just to get some record of what we were doing.
Mm,
I didn't expect to be like the next underwater cameraman for the BBC natural history thing or whatever. But I did think it'd be nice to have a GoPro and just pull it out or pass it to somebody. I remember asking the question, what should I buy? There was two. There was one called Movie that was a little bit more expensive than a GoPro, but it went deeper to 100 meters. Like I was going to be doing 100 meters anyway. Or I could get the GoPro that would go to 50. And the
mm.
reply from the assistant instructor was, concentrate on diving first. Don't worry about your camera. So instead, I have to go, authority. No, go and buy myself this GoPro thing anyway. So, and I still look back now at the video footage, and we were up and down like a bride's nightie. We
Yeah,
we were horrendous, but I'm glad I didn't listen because now I can look back and go, I've gone from this to wherever I might be on the scale of forward,
yeah.
and look back at it. But I understand where she was coming from. I didn't need it for the dive. What I needed to was worry about what I wasn't great at.
I think I don't want to say impossible, but it's probably impossible or highly
Mm.
unlikely that people in their youth are going to listen to that kind of advice, right? So I mean, this kind of brings up other touchy subjects in dive training,
Let's do
um,
it. Let's get
such as
straight into the
such
touchy
yes,
subjects.
such as teaching kids, right?
Mm.
Oh, that's a touchy one. So there's debates in the industry on, should we be teaching younger children to learn to scuba dive? I would side on the argument medical science says that they're still developing. psychologically they may not have the right frame of mind. But it's the frame of mind that I'm more concerned about, right? If I get a 15-year-old who says that they're interested, a father and mother bring in a 15-year-old and says, my kid wants to learn to scuba dive. Okay, well, can they physically lift all the equipment on their own without help? Can they
Mm.
tow a person? Right? Okay, so maybe they have the stamina and the physical strength. But let's talk for a couple of minutes and figure out where you're at mentally. I want to know how mature you possibly are. Because if you don't have the right frame of mind for scuba diving, you got to understand this is an inherently dangerous activity. And you get one mess up and that's it, you don't come back. And so I want to know that you're the kind of person who's a little bit more conservative, who's going to pay attention, who's going to that doesn't need that scared straight moment to do the right thing before considering whether or not I will allow you into a course. And I think that kind of thing, that kind of mental frame of mind, it takes a long time, especially for men, right, to kind of
Yeah.
subside well into our 20s.
I was going to
Which,
say, it's a good job we didn't have this conversation, excuse me, when I was 35 and learning to dive, because you wouldn't have let me get in the water.
right?
That said, I mean, I do like to have a laugh. I am a bit of a, not a comedian, but I like to be fun, and have a laugh and whatever. But when it
Mm,
comes to getting in the water, I am as serious as, it's going to be dangerous. So I do leave the humor on the
yeah.
boat when I
I
step in.
think
It's gone.
I think I think it's situationally dependent, right? Time and place for
Yeah,
all things. And of
absolutely.
course the dynamic of the group that you're with at the time. If you're with like a bunch of mates from the army who are all divers, right? You're probably going to have a different kind of group atmosphere and dynamic than a live aboard with people you've never been with before.
Yeah,
You might
you've got
mind
to
your P's
wind
and
it in.
yeah, you might mind your P's and Q's a bit there, right? So
Yeah,
work hard, play hard can work in some
totally.
aspects, and in other
Mm,
aspects, it's okay to pop off a bit and joke a bit, but then be serious when you need to be.
mm. It's always an hard one to gauge that because whilst I was taught as a military instructor, sort of address your audience appropriately, you know,
Mm. I
to
think
to
I think
want to go on.
no, I was gonna say I think for me that one of the things that I'm just now learning in life, unfortunately, is sarcasm.
Mm,
Um, I grew up traveling the world and moving a lot as a child. And so I had to grow up really fast. And there's a lot of social lessons I didn't learn as a child that I'm learning now that I should have learned when I was younger. Like kids
yeah,
learn when they live in one place their whole life. They learn these interpersonal dynamics between people. And one of those things is sarcasm. I have a hard time with it still to this day. And it's different. It's kind of I suppose I can laugh at it now, but when I was, younger, I would take it pretty bad.
yeah.
Um, but I understand sarcasm, and I could dish out sarcasm all day long. But sometimes people can be sarcastic with me, and it just goes right over my head. Like I cannot tell if they're being serious or sarcastic, and I'll have to look at them like, "Are you being serious right now?" you know, like because I
Yeah,
just
I
don't
totally get
know.
that.
So it's like
I'm
total.
literally the worst and most sarcastic person ever that I have ever come across or know. And but when I get it back, I'm totally like you. I'm like, if I don't know that person, I'm almost hurt. I've got my
Yeah,
lip starts quivering. I'm like, I don't really
yeah.
know. Are they being nasty or just nice?
Yeah, like a month ago, I was out of the dive site, and then so I was getting ready to get in the water. I had a buddy with me, a much older gentleman, and
Yeah,
we're both been diving for a long time, and you kind of you have this thing where there's a little bit of communication apprehension. You want to say something, but you don't want to come across insulting to the other person, so you just shut up and just don't say nothing. You're like,
yeah.
maybe I should speak up about that. So jokingly, all aside, like we're going to get in the water. I'm like, is your air on? He was like, nah. Wait, are you serious? No, of course it's on. Like, what do you think when you say
Oh god.
okay. I was like, all right, I'll just shut up now.
Yeah. Right, so looking through your Instagram anyway, I see you've progressed from back mount onto side mount. What made you take that sort of leap? It's a big
Back
change, isn't
issues.
it? Did you?
Yeah. Well, so I did back mount most of my career, doubles and singles and doubles. And
Mm,
anytime we needed to have like staged gas, you just clip it off to the side.
Yeah.
But I'm getting older, and I've had several back injuries, and it's just I don't want to lug around the weight anymore.
Mm.
And I wanted to move into technical diving, and I wanted something much easier to manage.
Yeah.
And I discovered the beauty of side mount diving, where I could just throw the tanks in the water and then jump in after them and have no weight on me. And
Mm.
I now that's I don't exclusively dive that because unfortunately I have to do back mount for recreational courses.
Mm.
But if I'm not teaching somebody at the recreational level, I am most definitely diving side mount now,
Did you think?
almost exclusively.
Did you think on your training for it, was it a big awakening like it was for me? It was almost like what's the word? Like a watershed moment. All of a sudden, diving became more fun. I had like a greater awareness of what was going on. I don't know, it's because I was more stable, or the teaching methods that we used. I don't know.
So I don't want to sound pretentious with this, but like the transition was nothing for me. The course I took, so I'd had some experience when I was in the military with side mount.
Yeah,
It was more toddy style. You just wrapped
yeah,
stuff around you wrapped the bungees around the tank heads and carried on. And it was a backflate wing, that you strapped down, took the waistband and pulled it through the wing, so that kept the wing down and wrapped around your body
yeah.
type thing, type deal. So I had some experience with it before. It wasn't the greatest, but when I did a side mount course, it was unimpressive. Um,
Really?
it was. I don't feel like I did not feel like I was challenged in any way, and it was the same when I did the TDI, Advanced Nitrox and Decompression Procedures course. It was not a challenge. I flew through it. There were other students that were in the class with me that were really having a difficult time. They were
Yeah,
challenged. They couldn't do no mask drills. You take your mask off and launch SMBs and tie off things, remove tanks and whatnot. And they were having a really, really hard time with it, and
right.
I just didn't. I was a sea turtle, just hovering there, like, okay, is it my turn? All right, we'll do the drill. I'm done.
Yeah,
What's next? Uh, and I do equate that to me having previous experience with this type of stuff.
yeah.
I've had previous experience with decompression. I've had previous experience with changing gases,
Mm.
and I've had previous experience with side mount. It wasn't the greatest, but I've had previous experience with it.
Yeah,
So when I did the course, I largely did it for the card so that I could go to a shop and say, "Hey, I'm a side mount diver. Give me tanks."
yeah.
Uh, that's the reason why I did it, and
Right.
I I think that once I started diving it more often, I
Mm.
truly grew to love it more, and I really think now I look back on it and I realized how much I didn't appreciate it in the past, and so I don't feel like I kind of robbed myself of opportunities earlier on,
Yeah.
but I'm really taking advantage of them now. And the other beauty of having the Triton CCR rig that I bought is that it can mount to any harness. So
Right.
because it's a chest mount rig.
Mm.
So if I'm diving a back mount, I can use a back mounted tank as diluent and bail out.
All
Uh,
right.
or if I'm diving side mount, I can do the same thing, diluent
Yeah.
bail out. And it doesn't really the unit doesn't have to change its configuration in order to mount up to your harness,
Mm.
as long as you have a pair of D rings on your shoulders and a pair in the back that you can
Okay.
strap the unit to. So uh, moving into side mount, I felt like that's just a natural transition. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel way more comfortable with this, with having little to no weight on me, and it would be perfect for use with the type of closed circuit unit that I'm trying to move on to.
Yeah. I've still, excuse me, I've still yet to come across that brand. I mean, I'm not pretending for one
Mm.
second that I've had a podcast with 80 guests or so that I'm the antithesis of everything that goes on about diving. I don't know everything or profess to. So where's it from, that Titan?
It's France.
I've never come across it before. I don't think.
Yeah, it's from France. It's from a company called M3S, Mike 3 Sierra.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's a French company, and they make it's pretty popular over here in Asia. There's lots of people who have it,
Yeah.
but it's a apparently it's also popular in the Nordic countries too.
Right.
Maybe not as popular as like as Revos or JJs or
Yeah.
anything like that, but it's getting there.
Mm,
But yeah, I wanted the chest mounted rebreather system. That's the best one on the market that I can
yeah.
find.
Right. Well, I'd literally, I'd come across APs obviously because you see them everywhere. Inspos, everyone's got one around here.
Yeah.
But but most people around here in the UK tend to be BSAC divers, and BSAC only trains on the inspo, so that's probably why the big yellow box.
Why is
And then
that?
I don't know,
Mm,
but then through media diving, most people
mm.
seem to be using a Revo. But I'd come across the JJ at the dive show a good couple of years ago now, and I thought that is a beautiful piece of kit. I hadn't done any rebreather try dives at all. I just saw that and I went, one day you will be mine. Then I sought out, the instructors, you know, went through a list of what they advertise,
Mm.
asked around, found out who was potentially going to be the best, did a bit more research on them. And that was right for me. The price was, I'm not going to lie, when he told me how much it was, I was like, oh shit, what have I let myself into now? I can't backtrack because I'll just lose any
Ah,
any credibility whatsoever.
I
Um,
can't afford one of those.
but
Those
then,
JJs are beautiful.
yeah, but I haven't tried a Revo, and as
Mm,
you noticed, Sarah, if you listen to today, Sarah, she's switching to a Revo Mini
mm.
because the JJ was just too big for her. And she didn't realize until she tried the other one on. So I'm like, well, have I done the right purchase? But still, I look at the Revo. No disrespect to Revo, I don't particularly like the look of it. And it's very much fashion over function still for me at the minute. I look
Yeah,
at it and
yeah.
think that is a beautiful piece of kit. And if someone else had it, I'd be jealous that they've got it and I don't.
I think you should probably look up the Triton and just take a look at it. Just take a
Yeah,
look
well,
at it. Yeah, yeah, just do that. The JJs are beautiful. They are extraordinarily expensive. That's like you could buy a
mm,
new motorcycle with
I
one of
know
those.
it's
And
sick.
and the other one that I absolutely fell in love with was the Sidewinder, made by
It does look
you.
fit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's got great performance characteristics to it. I love the split canisters. Uh, and I actually wrote them and said, "I want one," and then they gave me a quote, and I was like, "I don't want one anymore." So,
Oh,
yeah, that's the first one that I actually the first, company I contacted was them, and I was
yeah,
like, "Yeah, I want a Sidewinder." I really, because it's, I mean, I'm diving side mount, I want a side mount rebreather,
yeah,
and, I've just heard that it keeps everything very neutral, very centered, and the work of breathing on it is amazing. And it's great, especially since, like, for me, for example, later this year, I hopefully I'll be going to do full cave, and
yeah.
it's being used a lot in by guys in Florida for full cave, and Mexico as well, because it fits really well.
Mm,
But it was just beyond my price range, and personally could not justify that kind of expense. So I went back and I thought about it again, and I'm like, I've got some experience with chest mount. I'll stick with that, and so then I put in an order for the Triton, and so that's what I'm moving for now.
nice one. Tell us about your other book then.
So okay, so this is another lengthy subject, right? So spatial disorientation is something that has existed for 100 years in aviation.
Yeah,
And if you created a Venn diagram between aviation and scuba diving, you would find that there's a significant amount of overlap. The two share a great many things in common,
mm,
and spatial disorientation is one of them. I'm blown away. I did a little bit of digging for a little bit, and found that spatial disorientation simply is not taught in scuba diving, and it never has been. It hasn't been incorporated, and it's amazing because it affects divers more than it does aviators. We're at a higher risk for
right.
spatial disorientation than pilots are. And now I've been flying for 20 years, and uh, teaching spatial disorientation, rightfully so, has gone a long way towards limiting aviation accidents for decades.
Right.
Um, and it should be taught in scuba diving. Uh, we are biologically designed to orient our bodies when standing on the ground, and we have a natural horizon, right? But
Yeah.
when we're removed from the ground, from our hold, the things that stabilize us, and we're put into a three-dimensional space, being underwater, for example, we all of our sensory our sensory systems can become disrupted, and we're susceptible to a large amount of sensory illusions. Um, our visual system it provides upwards between 70 and 80% of our input, and there are 12 major visual illusions that can disorient and even incapacitate us underwater. Our vestibular system, our middle ear, keeps us balanced and detects changes in both angular and linear acceleration and gravitational forces. And when we're removed from a stabilizing hold, such as the ground, for example, and we're underwater, we are susceptible to a series of gyral and accelerative type of illusions, somatogyral and somatogyral illusions that can disorient and incapacitate people underwater. And believe it or not, every single diver on the planet has experienced some sort of spatial disorientation to some degree on almost every dive they've ever done. And they just don't know it. The overwhelming vast majority of people have no idea when they feel something that can be disorienting underwater, uh, A, what they felt, or B, how to avoid falling into that type of disorientation, or how to recover from that illusion if they
Mhm.
ever felt it again. And then this is because most people uh, when they experience spatial disorientation underwater, it's minor and they work through it naturally, and it doesn't affect them that much. But there
Mhm.
are some rare occasions where it can be very dangerous, and it can kill you. And believe it or not, it's really strongly associated to the root cause of a great many dive accidents that have occurred. So it's baffling to me that it's not taught in scuba diving, and so I'm trying to introduce the subject to the world of diving across
Right.
all the agencies if I possibly can. So that's why I
Yeah.
wrote the book.
Wicked. How long did you write that?
I just wrote it like in
Yeah.
January.
It's a thick. That's quite a thick book, to be fair. To say you've only just done it. Flipping heck.
I think I started it at the beginning of December, and
Yeah.
by like the second week of January, I was like done, and then published it.
It come quite
Um,
easy then.
well, I mean, I've taught the subject for a long time in
Yeah.
aviation, but I had to. I think the most of the work was transcribing it to relatability to diving.
Yeah.
It does transcribe one for one, with a few exceptions. There's some things that are unique to aviation that don't apply to diving.
Yeah.
So those are of course removed. Um, but the science behind it, how things affect the body, how we are affected underwater by movement, inertia, the proprioceptive type illusions that we feel with feeling pressure on one side and no pressure on the other side, and the delay in reaction between the movement of our internal organs as our body moves, as waves push us around, the type of ghost sensations we can feel after diving. All of these things apply equally to scuba diving,
Yeah.
and simple awareness, awareness goes a long way towards prevention and helping
Mm.
people stay calm. I've incorporated spatial disorientation into all of my training classes since I've been qualified as an instructor,
Yeah.
and I've had students come back to me after a course, weeks, months down the road, and say, I actually encountered some spatial disorientation on a dive. And just the fact that I was aware that that's what it was is what kept me from panicking.
Yeah.
Because the panic is one of the initial responses that people take instinctually.
Mm.
Whenever they become disoriented to the point to where they fail to recognize anything that's around them, or they have no idea where they are or how far away they are, or they get vertigo.
Oh, it's
They're
horrible.
dizzy and nauseous underwater. All of these things affect us in different ways, and
Mm.
some people panic. And simple awareness can go a long way to preventing panic too.
Yeah. I mean, I can identify that with that in when I was first taught to dive, and they were talking about down currents, coming over a wall dive or something like that.
Hmm.
And I was up in the what sea is it now? Anyway, the North Atlantic or whatever
Hmm.
last summer, and we were diving around this little sort of rocky outcrop. It's like a seamount that came out of the water at lower tides. when we were going around, you could see the kelp moving quite a lot. And all of a
Mm,
sudden, these bubbles from divers below us were not going up at all. They were going sideways and almost back down. And it was so troubling to me. I'd never experienced that before and was not prepared for it, although I had
mm.
heard of it. And I ended up having to grab hold of the sort of reef. And I was really, I can't even put words into it, panicked, or I don't know if I was that or if I was just stressed about the whole situation. But it was not something I'd ever experienced before. And I was like, I didn't really know what was going on. And it did trouble me for quite a while. And that dive then affected the rest of the week we were there. I didn't like it.
So let's talk about that one particular moment real quick.
Yeah.
I believe what you experienced was called relative motion, and this is a
Okay.
visual illusion. There's 12 visual illusions that we can encounter
Right.
that affect us. Relative motion is one of them. I guarantee you've experienced this before outside of diving. Okay, driving a car, you come to a stoplight. You're sitting at the stoplight. You're paying attention to the light, and out of the corner of your eye, another car comes up next to you, and you detect the other car out of your peripheral vision, right? You see the
Yeah.
car moving forward, but you instinctually think that, oh crap, I'm going backwards. So your reaction is to stomp on the brakes,
Yeah.
right? Have you ever encountered that? I think
Yeah.
every driver on the planet has encountered that. So underwater, we can experience relative motion. Let's say, for example, we're in an area with calm tides, we're not really swaying or moving or anything like that, but out of the corner of our eye, we see some seagrass kind of move, or
Mm,
our dive partner, we catch them out of our peripheral vision
yeah.
when they enter that part of just past the edge of the mast where we can see them, right? And we're like, oh crap, we're moving. And so our instinctual reaction is to move our fins to keep us in place. Well,
Mm,
what happens when we do that? There's a counteraction and it forces
yeah.
us to go forward. Well, now we recognize that, oh man, now we're moving forward. So we make another counteraction to counteract that action, and then another one and another one. And what happens is you see this progressive spiral of out of control, constant movement. And then
Mm.
people begin to falsely believe that they have to move to stay put, when if they just stop moving, they'd stay put and they wouldn't have to move everywhere. So this kind of action reaction sequence of events is partially responsible for the reason why a lot of new divers constantly move as well.
Mm.
Whereas if they would learn to just grab their hands and stop moving their body, they would instantly be in more control.
I never thought of it like that. And it is such a. You always see them around the shop line trying not to hold on, but all
Mm,
facing each other. And we're like
mm.
magnets, aren't we? Because you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
not move your fin, so everyone's bumping into each other, and then you've got to do a turnaround because it's easier. Not everyone can kick back fin, so they'll turn around,
Everyone
they'll come
can
back
back
around,
fin.
and they just keep going round in little circles, then crashing
Yeah,
into
yeah.
each other and going back round. It's like just don't move.
So we have a lot of this. Our senses, they're telling us, giving us some information, telling us where our position in the water, and we're using our monocular cues. What we're seeing, objects of certain sizes, things that are higher than others, we determine to be farther away or closer to us. These kinds of things, and what we're perceiving from the world around us is saying, "Oh crap, we're moving." We may not be moving at all, but we think we are, and
Yeah.
so we have this natural tendency, this unconscious, we're not really thinking about it, we're just doing it on instinct, to constantly fidget and move. And the ability to just not move and just exist hovering in the water is a skill that all divers eventually seek to emulate. And it takes
Mm.
time, of course. Doesn't come naturally to everybody, but it takes time, and over a long period of time, eventually, most people kind of get to that point, and then that's relative. Some people it's a little more, some people it's a
Yeah.
little less. Um, but every diver has probably experienced relative motion underwater and thought that they were moving when they weren't, because they saw something else move in relation to their position.
Yeah.
So I think that you experienced that, and along with, of course, the complicating it with the downdraft.
Mm. Mate, this has been such a deep conversation today. With the greatest of respect, it's not where I thought it'd be. I thought we'd just be chatting about diving around Japan and things like that. I thought it'd be well different. So it's been amazing, mate. Thanks for coming on. It's been ace.
Seriously, thanks for having me. I had
Mate,
no
no
idea where this
problem.
conversation was going to go either.
Well, it's been great to have you on and finally have a chat, mate. So we still look forward to seeing some more of your videos. Now I've found them. I've seen you put a post on the other day saying, "Why has no one commented?" And I
Uh,
I just genuinely, I am so busy. Sounds terrible, really. I just, whilst I've got loads of followers and I follow loads of people, I don't
mhm.
sit there all day, every day looking through Instagram. And I hate it when people do get 5 minutes and they're straight on the phone and all they can do is live on the phone.
Yeah. No, I don't do that either. I use it for a purpose, even to this
Yeah.
day, because again, I'm a huge advocate against social media. Um, but it does serve a purpose.
Mm,
That particular post, for example, was to try and find who actually interacts. So, I mean,
yeah.
there was one before that, preceding that.
Yeah.
Um, but then I expected like very little people, because typically you get like a return rate of 0.0246% of people who will
Mhm.
meaningfully react on social media. Uh, Ask me another time how I know that number. But I didn't expect nobody. So then I was like, okay, people pay attention to negative things more than they do positive things.
Mm.
Let me make a negative post and see what happens. And instantly, I got a whole bunch of
It's crazy,
messages.
isn't
I
it?
was, yeah.
I do agree with you though. Instagram for me is infinitely more positive because you can only put a love heart
Hmm.
on most things. You can put a smiley face and all the rest of it, or a wow. But then,
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to comment as such, but the instinct is just to press I like it, and you
and
can't
then move on.
dislike it or be angry about it. Whereas Facebook, everybody's got a flipping opinion.
Oh
Oh,
man, I don't do Facebook. I mean, you can find the worst of humanity in 10 minutes in the comments section of any
yeah,
post on Facebook.
yeah. But anyway, like I said, let's not do politics because it kind of is getting that way, isn't it? With the old
No.
should you, shouldn't you? But like I said, I'll keep an eye out now because I genuinely didn't know you were putting videos on it. It's nice to see what else is going on in the world. So when people do post videos about whether they're in the Bahamas or the Maldives or outside of Japan, I didn't even know Japan had a diving community till I'd come across you.
They have a
So
massive one.
yeah,
Yeah. And I make videos purposely to try and help people. Again, mentoring, right? So
yeah,
there's a couple videos that I've made that are just like introduction to this is this area, and here's the amazing
yeah.
things you can see. But for the most part, I try to focus on edification, educational content to help other people become better at being divers,
Mm.
because I don't want to see people destroying the beautiful places that we get to dive.
Totally. Is there anything else, mate, you want to cover before we go?
Oh, no, I mean, this was wonderful. I had a great time chatting, and thank you so
Nice one.
much for having me. I mean, your guests are amazing, so it was wonderful. It was great to be invited. I really appreciate
Mate,
it.
you've been an amazing guest, honestly. Right, mate. Have a nice evening. I guess it's kind of your bedtime now, isn't it? Well, it's my start of the day.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Mm,
Well, like I said,
happy
thanks.
days. Yeah, nice one, mate. Thanks for coming on. Take it easy, pal. See you later.
All right, see ya.
See you now. Bye bye. So that brings us to the end of the episode, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's guest enough to subscribe to the Fancy a Brew podcast and leave us a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Don't forget to take a look at Dive Life's website and social media channels, as they always have some great deals available, and you can use promo code ATND10 at the checkout to get some money off any non-discounted items. For more information on this episode, take a look at the description or follow us on Instagram for all the latest news and upcoming releases. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.